Welcome to the Hendersonville City Council Candidates Forum, brought to you by BRCC-TV and the Henderson County Chamber of Commerce.
Good day, and welcome to the first installment of the Chamber's Henderson County Means Business show. This is the inaugural program, jointly hosted by the Henderson County Chamber of Commerce and BRCC-TV. The program is designed to bring you important and timely information about the Henderson County business community as well as the Henderson County economy. My name is Mark Warwick, General Manager of WTZQ Radio and a Chamber volunteer. Today we're going to bring you a candidates forum featuring 3 candidates vying for 2 positions on the Hendersonville City Council. The candidates are Mr. Ralph Freeman, Mr. Ron Stevens, and Mr. Steve Carricker. The candidates will introduce themselves with opening remarks in just a moment. But first, we want to share with you the ground rules for the program. As a chamber-hosted event, the focus of today's forum is on business and local community and the local economy. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for opening and closing remarks. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for answering questions. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to respond to each question. We will proceed in a round-robin format, meaning that the order in which the candidates answer questions will change so that each candidate will have the opportunity to answer a question first. We will have a timer to let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining, then 10 seconds remaining. And if you see a stop sign, that means your time is up. If you have more to say on that issue, we just ask that you please include that in your closing statement. Also, we ask that the candidates refrain from debating one another and that answers be directed to the moderator. Well, now, why don't we begin with our candidate introductions and opening remarks. And we will begin with Mr. Ralph Freeman.
Thank you, Mark. I'm Ralph Freeman. I'm running for City Council. It has been an honor to have served the city for this last 2 years. We have still a lot to do, and I hope that people have liked what we've done in the past. I'll continue to stay on that same path to build economic development and to continue to improve our city the best way that we can. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have served, and as I said before, we will work hard to give the taxpayers and our citizens the best city that we possibly can do. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Ron Stevens.
Thank you, and good morning. I, too, want to thank the Chamber and BRCC for allowing us on the air this morning. This is a historic occasion here in Hendersonville, and we're delighted to be a part of it. I have decided to run for City Council again. I served in 2001 to 2005, 2 years of those as Mayor Pro Tem, and I feel like that experience plus my training, my education, and my business experience for many years, both being a business owner and working for large corporations, prepares me to be involved in the government of the city of Hendersonville, particularly in today's tough times. We are fortunate here not to be in the toughest situation in the country, but there are people who are businesses who have had to close. There are other businesses who are struggling to stay open, and we need, as the city, to do everything we can, and there are things that the city can do. I think one of the major things we need to do is to control spending. Every dime we spend should be divided into 2 columns. Needs and wants. Needs are things you have to do. Wants are things that you do when you can afford to do them, or it's a good idea during a particular time. There are some wants that the city has done that I support because they do help preserve or create jobs and bring people into the city for good business. We'll be talking about other points that I'm running on. It will come up in other questions. So again, I appreciate this opportunity this morning, and I'm looking forward to serving on City Council again.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Now, Mr. Steve Carricker.
Good morning. Thanks to BRCC and to the Chamber for inviting us here and making us part of this occasion. It's a great opportunity to get our message out and let the voters know where we stand on different issues. I've served on City Council since 2007, elected then due to some other issues in town, development issues, and prior to that, I was 16 years working for county government in the inspection department, and I volunteer as the member of the historic preservation, 6 years and 5 years as the chair. I enjoy public service. I enjoy the debate back and forth. I am very proud of what we've done in the last 4 years. We have managed to maintain a very sound fiscal position in the city. We have done some outstanding things as far as amenities for the city. We do need to, going forward in the city fiscally, we need to be responsible, very responsible with how we spend our money and how we budget things and what we do with taxpayer funds. As you know, if you pay attention to major media, we face some real uncertain times moving forward, not only in Hendersonville, but in the state of North Carolina, in the United States, and actually in a global economy. So going forward, it's my belief that we need to be very, very careful about how we spend money in the city, and I believe that we can still maintain a very, very high level of service to our citizens, keep moving forward with amenities, keep doing the things that the business community needs to be healthy and survive and grow when the economy turns around and recovers a little bit, and we need to maintain, but we just need to be mindful of the fact that we are in such uncertain fiscal times in a big picture sense that we have to really watch what we do and make some really, really good decisions moving forward. I do enjoy the back and forth and of controversial issues and working out a solution between groups and city council, and I have enjoyed that a great deal, and I would like to continue that moving forward if the folks have confidence that I can continue to do that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carricker. This concludes our opening remarks. And now we'll move right on to our candidate questions. Mr. Ralph Freeman will allow you to answer this question first. If elected or re-elected to the Hendersonville City Council, what would you do to encourage and promote small businesses throughout Hendersonville?
Well, first of all, I think we would work with our staff to develop a single checklist and a point of contact to guide new businesses and existing businesses for expansion of their businesses or coming to town, because there seems to be some confusion over what should I do first and where should I go and to carry that out. There seems to be some conflict or misunderstanding between the county's ordinances and what's required, that the city requirements. The county runs the building and inspection department. The city does not have that department. But I think if we can have a point of contact with new people that are coming to town and walk them through so that they know that they can call one person and be sure that they're on track to get their permitting done, their businesses open, and I think it'll be a less stressful for them and have a lot more consistency in what is expected of them. We need to also try to increase the privilege license threshold from $500,000 up to $1 million for our small businesses. This may not seem like a lot, but paying a $35 privilege license versus paying a percentage of their revenue does impact these businesses pretty heavily. And I'll work hard to try to continue to support our small businesses by trying to raise this threshold up to get these people a head start.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And now the same question to you, Mr. Carricker. Mr. Carricker, if elected or re-elected to Hendersonville City Council, what would you do to encourage and promote small business throughout Hendersonville?
Mark, I think we already have a lot of the vehicles in place we need to encourage small business. What we do, we've realized that our Main Street is what gets people here and what is the jump-off point for everything else that happens basically economically in Hendersonville. I think that between the planning department, our new Main Street director, the chamber, a few other vehicles we already have in place, that if they communicate better, we can set up a system very easily within our existing financial parameters, basically, that will take a new business and give them opportunity, show what they need to get through the bureaucracies involved. We do, as Mr. Freeman said, have a little bit of crossover with the county as far as building inspections and so on and so forth. They are located in the same building to make that as seamless as possible and have been there for a number of years, but we need to pull in some chamber folks. We need to make sure that our new Main Street director, Lou Holloway, is on top of that thing. Because our permit activity and zoning activity is down in a down economy, we need to transfer some of that human resource in the planning department to coordinating new business activity, I think. And I think that's a natural function for the planning department. I think it would work out well. But as long as we have city staff and a little bit of county help orienting people and showing them opportunities within the city, I know I'm heavily involved with the 7th Avenue group. Our executive director is basically, we've charged her to be a clearinghouse for business opportunities and sites for new businesses to relocate within that district, and I think that needs to translate out, and we could do a much better job within our existing framework with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens?
Yes, I think that there are several things that the city can do. I would work very closely with the chamber and with the Henderson County Partnership for Economic Development to do everything possible to get new businesses here. But for the current businesses that are here, I would be very sure that when new rules are being considered, that the businesses are brought into the process early on. Several times there have been changes to the city rules, and it was a surprise to the business community. They were not brought into the process early on. Even before it goes before the city council, it should be discussed with them for direction. Some of it needs to be put off or delayed. Some could be modified before it is brought on. I too believe that it's important to promote downtown and the 7th Avenue. I would like to see things be put into process that would help them work together and make a lot of activity between the two of them, which would bring in more people participating. The city is getting ready to continue redoing Main Street. I think they did an excellent job this last winter. They kept the process going. It was a minimum close down. But now they're talking now about this winter starting farther up Main, farther up North Main. I would put that off for 2 years because that impacts business, the local businesses on Main Street. And with business as bad as it is now, even the low business that they do, or the lower business they do in the winter, it's important to maintain that. So this is not an emergency. It needs to be done, but I would delay it.
Thank you very much. We'll now go with our next question, and we'll begin answers with Mr. Carricker. Regarding the city's reserve fund, what is the appropriate amount of money to be kept in a reserve fund, and under what circumstances would you vote to expend reserve funds?
Mark, we are overseen, like a lot of all small municipalities are, by a local government commission, and they expect us to keep approximately 8% of our yearly operating budget in a reserve. Historically, the city of Hendersonville has kept much more than that. Currently, we have about 33% of our yearly operating budget. Our operating budget this year is about 25.6, give or take a couple of $100,000, $1 million this year. We're holding back in the capital reserve fund about 35% of that budget. What typically happens if we are in good economic times and we go over 45% of our operating budget, all that money will rotate. Anything over 45% will rotate automatically through the finance department into a general fund. If we were, I would be, depending on need, and like I said in my opening statement, I think we need to be extremely fiscally conservative in these times, but if we had another opportunity to generate business on Main Street or generate business within the city limits, the Flat Rock Playhouse proposal that we supported, the South Main venue for the Flat Rock Playhouse was an immediate approval by all of City Council, because they came in and proved they could do it by using the historic courthouse and putting on plays. They proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that they could fill restaurants and get people walking by storefronts. So if we had something like that come up, I could probably see dipping into the reserve fund if we had we knew we had a pretty much proven return on it. Otherwise, I'd say to keep our powder dry and kind of keep our hands on that cash. But that has turned out well, and there's other proposals and so on and so forth. There's all kinds of things we could do moving forward. We just need to get them to investigate a little bit from a staff point.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ralph Freeman, same question to you.
Well, as Mr. Carricker said, the state requires all municipalities to have a minimum of 8%, and that amounts to about 1 month's operating expense for the city of Hendersonville. We're very fortunate to have in our reserve fund, or as we're calling it, according to the statement that came out from our financial director for the first quarter, we have right at $7 million, and you can work out the percentage of that versus our budget of 25.6 plus, give or take a few dollars there, as Mr. Carricker mentioned. Had we not had this cash on hand, it would have been very difficult for the city to take advantage of the opportunity to purchase property over on Sugarloaf Road for the fire station number 2. One of the first things that I was involved with the city when I was sworn in, I believe in that December meeting, was to meet in closed session with our city attorney and authorize him to pursue to buy that property at an auction. We got a good deal with that because we had the cash to operate, and that put us, I think, in the driver's seat. We need that cash for emergencies. If we have a major equipment failure, we lose a fire truck, well, people say, well, it's insured, but we can't wait for the paperwork. We have to move immediately to put that truck back in service, and that costs a lot of money. It gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us, puts us in charge or in control of our destiny. It would be great if all of our property owners, and all of us included, would have that much of a ratio in our bank accounts of our fund balance. But I would support taking money out of that for economic development and for emergency equipment replacement. And this is, I think cash is king, and I like that.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ron Stevens, same question to you.
Well, they have given you the percentages that are required by the state and the numbers that are required, and we are in good condition. I'm told that we have, as one of the gentlemen said, about 35%. One thing that's happened recently that I would not support is that when the budget was generated and presented this year, it was a balanced budget, which is obviously a very positive thing. But then within 2 weeks after that, money was spent out of the reserve fund that was not emergencies. It was for equipment they had to know that they were going to need. I would have brought that into the process of the budget, because I think it's being more straightforward with the public and not bringing up now, since that budget was passed, about $1 million worth of equipment and other things that have been done that they knew was going to happen. Now, it should be spent on things like buying land. I agree with Ralph for the new fire department. That was a super deal they got. I've been out there and looked at the property. Because of the location, the size of the property, and the price they paid, it was a real plus thing for the city. We, again, are very fortunate to have this money in reserve. We don't know what emergencies are going to come up, but that's when that should be used, only for emergencies and not built into things that we know are coming up. They should be in the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And for our third question, we'll, of course, come back to you as your opportunity to answer first as well. Regarding the gray hosiery mill, multiple studies have been completed by the city and other organizations regarding uses for this property. What do you think is the most appropriate use, and do you feel development should be done privately or publicly?
Well, as far as this new study was done, and I was at the presentation this week that the people who did the study made a presentation, a very professional group. But I think they proved that this was money that the city should not have spent. They have spent $55,000 on this study, and the engineering study. If you add all that together, it's approaching $70,000. 2 years ago or less, they did a study for around $55,000 on a convention center, and we're told that it should, and this spot was also studied, that if they're going to build one, it should be on Main Street with a hotel. This obviously is neither. So I feel like that this was money that should not have been spent. Also, there's a new center out at the Ag Center, Convention Center at the Ag Center that has just opened, that I'm sure they knew about. It's been talked about for 2 years. That is a real boon to this area. And it's going to bring a lot of business into this area. And if you look at what they are looking for, it's not agriculture. They're looking for all sorts of conventions and meetings from around the country, the region, and local. And that will be a boon to Hendersonville, and we don't have to pay for it. The state's paying for it. So that is a real plus. What would I like to see down there? I think there's been a proposal to put apartments there, and I think that would be a real plus. It would bring people into downtown, obviously to eat and to shop. It would be a big boon to the new university there for students and their faculty. And I think it would help join 7th Avenue and Main Street, the activity, because it would be in walking distance for people to shop and to dine. So I would have been against that study, and I think the study proves when you talk about the money they're talking about spending, $15 to $20 million, it really makes no sense.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Ralph Freeman, same question to you regarding the gray hosiery mill.
Well, the city bought this property in 1990. Mr. Mayor Michael purchased it for $400,000 at that time. It was used for storage or for the water department. Has since been used for multiple purposes. It's a great asset for the city. When you own property, it's as being a real estate investor, I think that's a good thing. We don't have to do anything with the property today. We're in the driver's seat. We don't have to make a final decision. We don't have to rush into that, any sort of decision today. It gives us a tool for the future to know what's best for the city and the best use for that. It will drive economic development at some point in time, and that would be my ultimate goal. My goal also would be not to use public money for any long-term future development of that. We'll have to maintain the building. We'll have to use public money for that, and I encourage that we do maintain it to a status where we can protect the asset that we have. But long-term, will have to be private investment to deal with that. It was not intended with this study for it to ever be a convention center. From the get-go, my take on it was for meeting space, and that's what the report showed. We're not ready for a convention center. We don't have the market for it, and we certainly don't have the space on Main Street to build a convention center. We don't own the property there. We own this property free and clear, and I think we need to use it for the best services in the future for economic development. And I think in long term that it will turn out to be that. But we do have our work cut out for us, and no decision has to be made today.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Steve Carricker, same question.
The city has been kicking around the use of this hosiery mill since 1979, long before it owned it. They have no one has really come to a decision. I don't know how many times it's been studied in the past, but the year before last, we studied one of the participants in this current study that just concluded was the driver in that previous study, and said that any facility like this, no matter what you call it, it started out as a civic center, it started out as a convention center, now it's a meeting space. We keep changing the name. The flavor of the day is now meeting space. I voted against this current study because I thought it was a waste of money. The previous study we did last year identified our needs, identified our wants, and identified a location to make it successful. Any facility like this or anything similar to it needs to be on the south end of Maine to anchor the south end of Maine and to drive business interests and so on and so forth there. I feel like a majority of council approved a new study to get a result they wanted for a specific location. I don't know that they got that result. I talked to the consultants by phone before a newspaper interview about a week and a half ago, and I asked him to give me the rosiest scenario for this building if they moved forward with the current proposal. It was $12 million less architectural fees and furnishings and equipment. I think that when we started this thing, when I first came on council back in 2007, this Gray's Hosiery Mill had been sitting there with the Mill Center for the Arts in limbo, and I brought it forward that we need to find some kind of use for the building and get it back on the taxpayer, get it back on the tax rolls. There's a proposal out there right now that will turn the building over to a private entity for tax credits, will generate about $25,000 in tax revenue for 30 apartments. The project will support Wingate University, rental housing, and be the economic link between 7th Avenue and Main Street. The comprehensive plan we developed a year ago identified a need for a link between 7th Avenue and Main Street. The residential proposal, I feel, would do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Carricker. On to our next question, and we'll begin, Mr. Freeman, with you. Main Street and its success is critical to the economic vibrancy of Hendersonville. Although it is very successful, one can't help but notice we still have empty storefronts. What will you do to attract more businesses to build on the success of our downtown?
Well, we've already started in that direction. We brought in a person under the city's control for DHI or down Main Street development. His focus is going to be on economic aspects for that. Yes, we do have some vacancies on Main Street. It's sad to see that. But when you look at other areas, we are very fortunate even in the worst of times. And this is hard to understand for many of the businesses there. They still are struggling. It's a struggle for many of us. We need to continue to work hard on our economic development for Main Street, and with our new director, I believe that we're headed in that direction. We need to complete the Main Street improvement project. These next two blocks will be very impressive when they're done. The gazebo is going to get reconfigured. It's probably going to be our most expensive of the phase of this Main Street reconstruction. I think everyone's going to be impressed when that's done. And when you do that, you're going to increase the odds for new business people to locate on Main Street. It is the goose that lays the golden egg for Henderson County. We need to do everything we can to continue to do that. The market's going to judge, final judge, as to which businesses survive and don't survive. It's difficult for the city. It's not our place to tell business owners how to run their business. All we can do is put the best infrastructure there, provide them with the best tools on our part, and continue to work with them and keep them going. And I think that long term, the investments we're making now will pay off for the merchants who locate on Main Street. And I think it will continue to be a prime spot for all.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Steve Carricker, same question to you regarding Main Street.
I believe that we are on the right track with Main Street. I think that we are doing pretty much all we can infrastructure-wise. I think we need to continue on. The first two blocks of this current infrastructure renovation project and street lighting is moved forward very seamlessly. The contractor worked great with the merchants. We didn't have a lot of merchant complaints, and they were very encouraging, and we intend to keep moving forward with that. There's only so much we can do, and I think that by morphing DHI into a division or a part of the planning department, we were able to attract a very good candidate. We had some problems with turnover in the executive director position at DHI, and it's a very difficult position, frankly, to work with a bunch of individual entrepreneurs to get them on thinking in the same direction and get them all moving in one direction sometimes. So I think that if we tailor that planning position, which is now the Main Street program, use the guidelines the state's provided for us, get that guy out on the street, get him working. I do think the business community could take a step forward and help City Council. Some of those property owners might be able to forgive some of their square footage rates for a short period of time until the economy gets a little healthy, and maybe prorate it out for a few years until the business gets established and gets healthy. There's been a lot of activity down on 7th Avenue with new businesses because the square footage is much more affordable down there, given the fact that they're still renovating and rehabbing. So I think that's kind of a proven formula, but between the new Main Street director and the city's infrastructure projects and possibly a little bit of private participation on the part of landowners, I think we're in pretty good shape. And like Mr. Freeman said, part of this empty storefronts is just the nature of small business. There's a lot of small business failures, and that's just the nature of entrepreneurship. So moving forward, I don't think it's strictly the city's responsibility. I think there's numerous players in it, and I think they all need to work together for a common goal.
Thank you, Mr. Carricker. Ron Stevens, same question to you.
Well, certainly Main Street is critical to downtown, and we have done a good job down there for many years. We're in tough times now. I've talked to a lot of those business people, and they are really concerned about the coming season when things drop off. That's the reason I said earlier in this program that I would delay redoing the street for 2 years. So, because if you talk to these businesses, you find out what their goal is and what they are successful, most of them, the ones that succeed, are successful in doing, is breaking even during the winter and then making their profits in the spring, summer, and fall. If you go in and tear up these streets, which eventually has got to be done, again, I am told it's not an emergency, then they have a better chance of breaking even in the wintertime. And with the reduced profits they're going to probably make in their good season, this is even more critical than ever. I think the new setup with the Main Street marketing is excellent. I think the new director is very qualified. I would have done the process differently because I would have had, there were good board members on the old board and there are good board members on the new board. But I would have mixed those two and had representatives from both. That was another case where the city did not involve the people that were involved in the old system until they were ready to make the changes and announce that the changes were going to be made. In fact, some of the old board was at the city council meeting and were not allowed to speak, which I don't think is the way to involve people, to keep them involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to our next question, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Carricker. The redevelopment of 7th Avenue has long been a priority for city officials and has proven to be a tough task. What strategies would you implement to buoy current redevelopment efforts, and what strategies might you consider?
Mark, when I ran for election first time, I kind of made the 7th Avenue issue my signature issue because I'd seen an area of town that just kind of got neglected for a number of years, besides the police force and the zoning enforcement officials making their passes and doing what they need to do on a daily basis. We have managed to re-energize 7th Avenue a little bit. Like I said, we've created 12 new businesses down there in the last year, which is extremely positive. City government has given, first couple of years I was on council, we budgeted them about $80,000 a year for infrastructure items, street lamps, street lighting, garbage cans, things like that, signage to improve the perception. We've put more police presence down there to take care of the perception that it's a high crime area. A lot of that stuff has moved out. Things are improving. the merchants down there and the folks, principally the business community, has embraced the effort, and they do what they can to support that. The festivals they're having down there, the bazaar that's going to happen Saturday down there is expected to draw about 5,000 down there. It's been very successful. The organic market's been very successful. They're partnering with the Apple Festival on a limited basis to get that done. I think we need long-term to look at a little bit of a redevelopment aspect between 7th Avenue and Martin Luther King to take some of that old housing that is very questionable for rehab and do something else with that piece of property. There are other parts of residential areas of 7th Avenue are in relatively good shape and healthy and well maintained. We just need to keep moving forward with what we're doing right now. And I have told the 7th Avenue group on many occasions that the city can't do everything for them. They're going to have to step up and help themselves, and I'm very proud of what they've done down there. And if we keep moving forward, it'll continue to grow. New bakery, new brewery down there, and they're rocking and rolling.
Thank you, Steve. Ralph Freeman, same question to you regarding 7th Avenue redevelopment.
Well, as many of you know, I live very close to this neighborhood. I live in Cold Springs Park, a historic area off of North Main Street, and I started the community watch program over there when I came into office, and it has done well. Crime rates are down. The community is trying to work together. The community watch involved not only the residential but the business community as well. And I was proud to be a part of that and continue that in operation. I think the district does need to be enlarged a little bit to take care of some businesses also off of 7th Avenue proper to increase their revenue to where they can do more. That's been talked about, and hopefully that will come on board here in the near future. The city's done a lot of improvements over there. We put in recently a sidewalk along the railroad tracks behind the depot over to 5th Avenue to make the walkability to downtown much easier than going up to cross at the intersection at the Presbyterian Church. I would continue that. We need to continue to support that, but also some of this is going to have to come from within. My major push at the next stage would be to work with the property owners down there and do some facade improvements on the streetscape, do some improvements on their buildings. There are several buildings down there at one time had living spaces on the second floor. Tried to reevaluate that and get that back on the market. They have talked about having apartments, and all their apartments over there, they just need to be put into service and make them available to the people. I think time is right for that to start happening. They can have studios in there for art galleries and other things on those second floors. The rent is cheaper there, the economics are better, and it does work better for that. And I think that would be a major step in the area that to go. And with the city's help, which we've done in the past and continue to support, I believe it will work.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ron Stevens, same question to you.
Well, as everyone knows who lives in the city, there have been some dramatic changes down there. When I moved here 15 years ago, it was not safe to go down there in the daytime, much less the nighttime. But due to the work that the police department has done, that is totally changed now, and I think everybody feels safe going down there. There are new businesses who are doing well, and we certainly hope to see more. I would too expand the area because I think that would bring in more revenue to market the place. The other thing I would do is to look at the old theater. That is now on the market. It was listed this past week. I would like to see the city investigate that to see if there's possibility of buying that and converting it into places for meetings and for other things that has been suggested would be a good idea to do down on the Mill Center. There's plenty of parking there. I've watched it in flooding conditions, and very little of that place floods. So it could, and it's very accessible and very visible from, as you know, from Martin Luther King Boulevard. The other thing that I think is going to happen, that new Wingate College, university, which I think is the best thing to happen to downtown Hendersonville since Main Street was developed, is to see that they expand in that area when they expand, because I think it's going to happen. And there's some buildings there that could be great for them to use as for classes, and you could do classes on the second floor and new stores on the ground floor. So there's a lot of things that can happen there, and I think we continue to do what we've been doing plus the new things.
Thank you, Ron. We'll go to our next question, and Ron, we'll start with you with the answer to this question. When is it appropriate for the city to annex? What services, if any, should the city provide before annexation can occur?
Well, the legislature in the past session changed and strengthened, or restricted rather, when cities can annex now. It's not as, they're not as free to do that as they were, although I think annexation can be very important when an area grows. They need the services of the city, and the city is providing some of them for those people because they come into the city. And so for them to pay taxes is legitimate. I think that the tax rate when something is annexed should be set up so that it looks at the services that are going to be provided. So if some of the services can't be provided for several years, then you don't charge the full tax. You bring it on as it is scheduled. So there's certainly some areas that are going to need to be annexed here as they grow and boom. But and I support that. But again, I don't think we should charge for services until we can provide them.
Thank you very much, Ron. Mr. Freeman, same question to you regarding city annexation.
I think that is appropriate to annex city when all the city services can be provided. We have to provide full services for an annexed people for development. Incentives may be a part of that for development, working with the county and partners for economic development, that where we might waiver some of those impact fees or service fees to make it more easier for business to have startup. But I believe that if you're in the city and you're paying city taxes, we need to provide full services. I've always believed that, and the exceptions would be made only to people who would provide economic benefits, jobs, and other sources for the total community in the future. That would be my goal or my comment as far as annexation. The state did pass some legislation, and most of the residents of the city are unaware of that. I think it's very critical that cities do have the ability to annex in the future. If not, then we get locked in with a geographic and tax base that many of our northern cities have happened to do that, and those people have ended up in our towns and the cities because of excess taxes. If we cannot grow and the services be demanded, then somebody has to pay. And I think that we need to be aware of that and what the state legislation has done to all municipalities in the city, and maybe look at that to see if we can get that changed, because it does restrict us considerably. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. Steve Carricker, same question to you regarding city annexation.
Mark, the city has a history of basically only going after voluntary annexations. I think that's the right approach. The only time we ought to be able to, charge our full tax rate is if we're providing sewer, water, police, and fire protection to an annexed area. I do agree with principally voluntary annexations. Most of our, like I said, most of our things are voluntary. If I have a subdivision, years ago we did, before I got on council, for instance, the septic systems in Brooklyn Manor were failing, and they had no repair areas. They had no recourse. So in that instance, we were forced during Mayor Niehauf's time to annex that area to provide sewer service to those. If you don't have sewer service to a residential lot or a commercial property, you're basically sitting on a condemned piece of land, can't do anything with it. So I more or less The state legislature kind of overreacted when the balance of power changed from one party to another, I think, but I agree with most of it. Most of that reaction was due to places like the city of Asheville and forced annexation issues in South Buncombe County, and unfortunately one local municipality has a tendency to make us all look bad on an issue if they abuse it, and I think that's where most of that came from. But I think that annexation could be advantageous to an individual property owner if they weigh all their options and if they don't have any other options for sewer service. But I agree with some of the other responses here that if we can't provide everything in the package, sewer, water, fire, police, they don't need to be paying a full tax rate. But I think annexation is a tool to improve people's lives, not necessarily generate tax revenue. We're here as a government to provide services, and I think annexation is one of those tools that we can provide services when people request them. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Carricker. That's it for our questions. That's it for our time for questions, at least. And we will now allow each candidate 3 minutes for closing remarks. We'll begin with you, Mr. Freeman.
Well, I want to thank the Blue Ridge Community College TV for this opportunity to put on this program, and the Chamber for all the work that they do. I am a member of the Chamber and through my business operation, and they do great work for small businesses and large. This is a great venue, first time around. The group that was in here earlier helping us get ready, I commend them for and wish them well in their venture and as they go out from here and learning these tasks. Thank you again for doing this. A couple of comments on some of the things that were said earlier about particularly this hosiery mill business. I was taking the oath of office for the city of Hendersonville. My first obligation and commitment is to the residents of Hendersonville. What Buncombe County does or Greenville does or whatever may or may not impact us. I look for economic development first within the city of Hendersonville, in the city limits. Second, I go to the county to look for development. I think that whatever we do with that particular property will take some study, continued study, and it will eventually be positive and economic development for the city. And I want to see that happen. Without spending public money. We've done a lot of great things in the city of Hendersonville. Our forefathers did the serpentine for Main Street. I'm honored to be a part of refurbishing that after these 45 years plus that that has. We need to continue to grow where we can, as we can. I will work hard for all the residents. I'm available. I am committed to serve. I've attended multiple meetings to the Chamber, to public functions on behalf of the city. I'm scheduled this Saturday to go to a Boy Scout Court of Honor to present certificates from the city on behalf of the city. I enjoy that. I'm committed to do this. I would appreciate your vote and your support. I'm available for any comments, and people that know me know that they can reach me, and that I do return phone calls. Please call me if you have any concerns. I'll try to work with you, business community, resident community. I'm a neighborhood guy. I like clean neighborhoods. I like a clean city. We're getting there. I'm proud of what we've done while I'm on council, the support areas that we've done. I think we've made some good decisions, and I welcome any comment from any of the residents. Thank you so much for this opportunity to have this forum.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Now closing remarks from Mr. Ron Stevens.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the Chamber and the school here for letting us come in and do this morning. I think it's important for us to talk to the people in the city and to tell them why we're running and what we think is important. Again, I think that what is really important is to control spending during these difficult times. And I would do the things that I've outlined to control spending. Also to preserve jobs and to create jobs for people in the city, and there are ways that we can do that. I support very strongly the rail to trail, or now I think it's called the HCCDebate trail. That will create jobs. It will bring people in here for having fun, and that will be a boom to this city. Other places that I have visited that have done this, it's been very positive. We've got to work with the railroad properly to get this done, but I think it can be done. I think we should be studying and talking to other towns that have done this and work with railroads. There's other issues that will come before us as members of the council. Again, my experience on council, my business experience and training, I think has prepared me to do the service to the city. I've adopted this city, been here 15 years, could have moved at that time to any place in the country, chose to be here. My wife's from Greenville and has been coming here all of her life. It was really suited her to stay here, and we will be here for the duration. And I hope that I can serve on city council again. Please go on and look up my website, electronstevens.com. You'll see the report on my history. You'll see the things that I think are important and why, and what I plan to do. You can send me an email, or you can call me at 697-1146, and I'd be delighted to talk to you or to respond to your email. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Now we'll have our closing remarks from Mr. Steve Carricker.
Thank you, Mark. I really do appreciate the fact that the Chamber and BRCC have provided this venue. This is exciting to be part of a first. And I think that one of my big issues since I've been on council is transparency, and this is the ultimate transparency. You get to see even how we look up close, whether it's attractive or not. Anyhow, I have enjoyed my time on council. I'm not a native of here. I've been in Hendersonville since 1983, came back here on vacation in 1981, immediately felt like this was home, adopted the hometown. As my hometown, I married a local girl who's been here all her life, never left. She was one of the clever people that never left. Appreciated what you had. I think I have proven, a lot of people when I first ran for office thought I was too direct and too straightforward and not friendly enough to do this job, and I think that where they may have some standing in those opinions, I think I've proven over the last 4 years that I am willing to take on significant controversial issues, work the parties to a common goal, and work the solution out for the good of everybody. The only way we can work issues going forward, and some of the issues in the past, are to continue the dialogue between parties and get everybody involved and come to some kind of conclusion. We can't just name call and not make any progress. So I've appreciated some of those things I've done in the past and enjoyed the back and forth. It may seem that that's a little strange, but I do enjoy the controversy and do enjoy working out the issues. But like the issue moving graves in the cemetery, the animal issues, and the drought response we had when we went through a significant drought event back in 2008, all came out to positive conclusions. And actually, we sprung off some positive things like water conservation and rebates on water-saving fixtures from some of those debates and the outcomes. So I do enjoy serving. I sit on the transportation committees for the city, both in the French Broad MPO and the county, and I just get involved. I like to volunteer my services within council where I see a need. Part of the issue with this Gray's hosiery mill with me, this has been my business for 35 years. I thought the direction council was going with it was a bad idea from the get-go, so I haven't been heavily involved. It doesn't take me long to form an opinion when I'm dealing with public money and proposals that I think are losers. And I don't think the current direction that council's got going on this Gray's hosiery mill, I don't think the reasoning for their decisions are correct. I think there's a better use for this building, and I think we need to be, the lack of transparency in the process has given me a lot of pause and cause for concern, because the public, like has been stated before, it's a public building and the public needs to make this decision on what its use going forward is to their best advantage. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of our candidates for participating today, Ralph Freeman, Steve Carricker, Ron Stevens. Thank you to BRCC TV for producing today's forum. And of course, thanks to Henderson County Chamber of Commerce for hosting the forum. My name is Mark Warwick with WTZQ Radio, asking you to please join us for future programs of Chamber's Henderson County Means Business show right here on BRCC TV.
BRCC TV, the education channel.